In today's video, I will connect all of my row squares together and make a border of my Afghan. Here I have 12 squares, so I'm going to make a baby size Afghan. It's going to be 3 squares by 4 squares. Because the last round of each square was made with green yarn, I will be connecting them all with green yarn as well, and I will be working with the same hook, which is G 4.5 millimeters. I will be using the slip stitch method to connect the squares together. I placed 2 squares next to each other, the right side facing inside, like this. Then into the chain 1 space of each corner on each square, right here, I attach my green yarn. Next, I draw a loop, and now I'm going to grab the front loops only of the first square and the back loops only of the second square, like this. This square has 2 loops over here, and I'm only grabbing the first loop, the front loop. And the square on the back also has 2 loops, and I'm going to grab the back loop only, and then I draw yarn. Then again, I grab the front loop only on the first square and the back loop only on the second square. And I draw yarn, forming my slip stitches. Again, front loop only and back loop only. And I continue crocheting this way across. Here I made several more stitches, and if I unfold my squares, we can see that I'm getting this very nice seam over here. So I'm going to continue crocheting this way all the way to this chain 1 space of the corner. Here I am at the corner, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm grabbing the front loop only of the chain 1 of this square and the back loop only of the chain 1 of the square on the back. I should check if my seam looks all right, and if I unfold my squares, that's what it looks like, and it looks pretty good to me. So I can continue. I don't want to have a lot of knots in my blanket, so I'm not going to cut the yarn tail here, but instead I'm gonna take 2 more squares, fold them together, and now I will continue crocheting along the side of these 2 squares. Here I'm doing the same thing in the chain 1 spaces. I'm grabbing the front loop only of chain 1 of this square and the back loop only of the chain 1 of the square on the back, and I draw a loop. Then I continue crocheting the same way. I grab the front loop only and the back loop only. Again, the front loop only and the back loop only, and I continue crocheting this way until the end of this side of the new squares. This is what it looks like. I should check the seam of my second pair of squares. It looks good. So now I will take 2 more squares, fold them together, and continue crocheting along this side of the new squares. Now I finished stitching together 2 more squares, and now if I take my work and unfold it this way, this is what it's gonna look like. My squares are stitched this way, but not over here, and I have 6 more squares to stitch. I will stitch them the similar way as I did here, and then once these are stitched, I will start stitching them all together along this side and this side. So I'm cutting the yarn over here, and I will start stitching the other 6 squares. Here I finished stitching together 6 more squares, and now I'm going to cut the yarn and fasten off. Here is my work so far. Now I will be stitching along this side of the squares. Now I will fold my squares this way, again the right side inside. I will attach my yarn into this corner over here, and I will continue crocheting, stitching together along this side. I attach the yarn, and here I'm stitching my squares together, grabbing the front loop only of the first square and the back loop only of the second square. One thing I should note here is that when you make your slip stitches, make sure they are not too tight, not too loose, so your seam comes out just right. Also, check on your seam often to make sure that you didn't accidentally grab more than front loop only and back loop only. Here I am at the place where 4 squares are connected together. This is a corner space. And now I will just continue crocheting these 2 squares together. Again in front and back loop only. I don't cut the yarn here, but I take the second half of my blanket, fold it, and I will continue crocheting along this side. Important thing to note here is that when you crochet, these squares are loose and they might twist to the other side. Then you will fold it like this and crochet along the side, but when you unfold it, you will end up with the right side of the square and the wrong side of the square. So make sure that they don't twist, and when you fold them together to do your stitching, the right side of the roses is always facing in. So now I only need to stitch along this side over here, and all of my squares will be connected. Finally, all of my squares are connected, but before I make the border, I'm going to do 2 things. First, I will examine my blanket carefully and hide all the loose ends. Then I will block my blanket because, as you can see, my squares are somewhat ruffled and bumpy. I laid my blanket on a towel, generously sprayed it with water, then stretched and shaped it, and now I'm going to leave it to dry. The final step is to make the border for my blanket. Into the corner, I will attach green yarn and make 1 round of single crochets around the perimeter of my blanket. I draw a loop, make chain 1, and make 3 single crochets into the corner space. Then I make a single crochet into each double crochet to the next corner space. Here I got to the corner space, and I'm going to make 3 single crochets into the corner chain 1 space. And then I continue crocheting 1 single crochet into each double crochet across to the next corner. Here I am at the end of the first round of single crochets. I joined this round with a slip stitch, and now I'm going to make 3 more rounds of single crochets with green yarn. Chain 1 and a single crochet into the same stitch where I joined, and then into the next single crochet, which is single crochet of the corner, I make 3 single crochets. 1, 2, 3. Then I continue crocheting 1 single crochet into each single crochet around, and into each single crochet of the corner I will make 3 single crochets. I made 4 rounds of single crochets. Now I'm going to cut off the yarn tail, fasten off, and hide the end. Next I attach pink yarn, and I will continue crocheting the same way, just making single crochets around the blanket with the pink yarn. Here I made 5 rounds of single crochets in pink color, and now I'm going to cut the yarn and fasten off. All I need to do now is to hide the yarn tail, and my rose Afghan is ready.